Hey everybody, Robert with RC Archery, and you're watching Tuesday's Tip of the Week number 92. In this week's video series, I'm gonna go over one tip that will help you be a better archer, shoot smaller groups, make better scores if you're a target archer, no matter your skill level, whether you're just beginning or you've been doing this for a while. So that video will be today, and then in our members only video that also comes out today for the members of this channel, we will go one step further, and I'm gonna go over the pressure in between our bow hand and our release hand, what that needs to feel like throughout execution, and then we're also gonna look at the way that I pivot a release through my hand, whether it's a resistance release, a thumb release, or a hinge release. So a lot of good information covered today. Let's get started. All right, in today's video, we're gonna break this down into multiple sections. The first part will be what the tip itself is, how to make that work in the second section, and then the last section we're going to go over a couple areas that I see people having problems with when they start implementing this process and how to go about fixing that. So let's get started on what this actually is. When you are shooting and executing your shot, most people that I watch at the range, myself included, especially when I get nervous or I'm in a pressure situation, will start rushing their shots. And the thing that we need to keep in mind here is we want to slow down our shot execution. And there is a level that we'll need to slow it down to. Everybody is different, and I will walk you through what that looks like for you and how to find it. But first, let's talk about why we need to do this. I see a lot of people, when they're rushing through their shot, start overcompensating for where their pin is. You can see your pin floating around on target. It may want to drift off to the side, and then this archer will try to push the pin back to the middle. Our subconscious is already doing this, so we actually push it off complete opposite direction, and then we're fighting it to come back, and it's just a vicious circle over and over again. Down the road, what this leads to for a lot of people is target panic, because they start seeing their pin start floating away. They try to put it back, it goes the other way. They're trying to put it back, and they're fighting the entire time to get this pin to go back into the middle and moving their body around and timing things out to eventually to the point that they just get on target, and as soon as they get on target, they snap a shot off. They don't let it float, they don't let it stay there, they don't let it do anything. If that sounds like you, this video is gonna help you a ton. The reason that we need to slow things down is because our subconscious will actually pick up on the pattern of what we see with our float. When we're moving around on target, our subconscious is picking up that the pin needs to be in the middle. We want it to be in the middle. And when it drifts away, it starts to put it back. As long as we stay out of our own way while we're shooting and slow things down enough, our body will start syncing up with its natural timing, and your shot will be a little different from one or the other based off what it needs. So that's why we talk about when we start our shot execution, we start it in a smooth and controlled and slow manner, and we do that without any interruptions in it. Because if we start stopping and starting while we're rolling through a hinge release, squeezing down on a thumb trigger, pulling through the shot, whatever we're doing, then that's just signaling our brain to not be able to pick up on the pattern because there's nothing there. It'll see a pattern and then it'll change, and it'll see a pattern and it'll change in a different direction because we're stopping and starting. So we don't want to do that. All right, so what is the correct speed for you? Everybody is different. Some people will need a much slower speed than others. Some people can actually get away and their body needs a little faster pace. But the easiest way that I have found to figure out where we are as an individual and what we are needing is to look at this from a standpoint of what is our hand-eye coordination and what are we capable of doing. So real quick here, I'm gonna put some lines here on the screen, but essentially what you need to do is you can take your finger and hold it off in the distance. I really recommend using an arrow because this arrow has a little bit of movement with our body's natural movement. It's a little bit harder to do this, and it will really exploit the speed that you're going to need to follow in order to make this drill work for you. Take some lines, go up and down, and so on. And while you're doing this, have this out in front of you and try to be 100% perfect at whatever the fastest speed you're capable of doing it at. Some people are going to try this to begin with and they're going to think, oh, this is easy and I can just go through this, no big deal. And they're going to look at it and run through this and they're going to find that they are missing the lines. You're essentially back in kindergarten where we're coloring and we're trying not to color outside the line. You will see that you may have to do this multiple times to get it perfect, and by perfect, I mean perfect. Don't accept 95% there. Don't accept 98% there. Don't even accept 99% there. You want to be able to do this 100% perfect, and then you want to be able to replicate it multiple times to where you never leave the lines. You start at the bottom peak, perfectly get to the top peak, and start without going over or without being short of the dot. Go back down and do the exact same thing every single time. Whatever speed that it takes for you to do this drill, that is the speed that you need to execute your shot at, because that is the natural timing your body has on what it can comfortably, perfectly put your pin back to the middle of the target. If you go faster than this, those are the shots that you're going to miss. If you go slower than this and it drags on too long, you'll start noticing those are the shots where you're running out of gas, your float opens up a little bit and you have some issues. So the hardest part for me as an archer is replicating this timing perfectly from one shot to the next. But that is the number one thing, no matter what level you are, no matter how good or bad your form is, how close or off your draw length is, if you can do this one thing really well, you will shoot really good scores and really good groups, no matter what. Now you can improve on those with the other factors we talked about, but this is the one area that you need in order to make yourself the best archer you can be. All right, a couple areas of issues that a lot of archers have when they first start this process. And the main one that I hear most with the feedback that I get and that I see most when I'm working with archers is they know what speed they need to do with their shot execution, but they cannot go that slow without their body giving out. The bow starts feeling really heavy, your aiming opens up really big, the pattern of what you're seeing and all of that is breaking down too soon. So there's a couple things that we need to look at. One, it could be as simple as a release adjustment. You may be too slow on a hinge, too heavy on the button, and it's just taking too long, and you may need to adjust that for timing. I did a video about shot timing. I will put this up here so that you can go back and look at that video and understand it better. It's looking through my scope, and I go over step by step what you need to do for adjustments. It also could be that your body's form is just not where it needs to be yet. When we look at our form as an archer, we want to be using every aspect of our skeletal support, our muscle support, and stacking our major joints. And what I mean by that is our shoulders need to be staying over our hips, and our hips need to stay over our feet. You can vary from that if you're an advanced archer and things are working for you. But when we're looking at setting up an archer that's having problems with this, I'm usually going to try to get them as close to a cookie cutter solution as possible, because it will be easiest for them to feel what they need to and be able to work the way that they need to. So we want to make sure that our body is setting up with these joints in place, because if our shoulder on our bow side gets outstretched or pulled in too far, it loses the connection of that joint. The muscles around that joint help stabilize you. The other thing is our bow being in the correct height. If our bow hand is at or above the shoulder, that bow's weight is transferred to the core of our body. If the hand is below that shoulder, then the bow's weight is transferred to our hand. And I don't have to explain to you how much heavier that bow is going to feel with the weight only on your hand, and how light that bow will feel with the weight transferred and shifted to your core. So we want to make sure that we are doing this correctly, drawing the bow back correctly, anchoring, having our form set up, having the draw length and the loop length set up correctly as well. Being too long on draw length, overcompensating with our body being disconnected, or even being too short and having issues. The same with the loop length. I've gone over videos of how to find this in the past, so I won't go into it here, but if you also need extra help or want me to work step by step with you, I do have a coaching package just on form and fitment, it's $25, but we go over everything that you need to do to get exactly perfect. And then I give you how to fine tune that with what your personal form and your personal needs will be as you go forward. Now, the second part of this that I see a lot of people having issues with is target panic. A lot of people just can't get their pin to the middle of the target and leave it there and work through the shot slow enough to match what they did in our test before. If that is you, then we need to address what the triggers are there and then make that go away. I have a target panic video. It's an instructional video that I put together. It's based off Stanford University studies on how to address OCD, obsessive compulsive disorder. Target panic and OCD, it's the same thing. It's seeing a trigger and then a response to that trigger, and then you have to, first of all, figure out what that is, but then you also have to figure out how to replace a bad trigger with a positive trigger so that when something happens, you're adjusting to it correctly. And then you also need to have a fail-safe to bail out. So there's multiple steps to this, but I'm gonna give you a quick excerpt from the video that I sell online. This video is right around an hour long, so you're just gonna get a short segment here of a few minutes. But it's just to give you an idea of what you're looking at in that, and the way that it's laid out if you've never purchased or watched any of my instructional videos in the past. After that, we are done. So I appreciate you watching this video today. Thank you for tuning into this channel. If you're a member, thank you for being a member of this channel. If you want to see extra members content, down in the description below, there will be a link so you can see the 2 packages that I offer, what the price of it is. It's all here on YouTube. You just get extra access to more videos, and you get extra access to me for coaching as well. So depending on what you want to pick, it's there. Appreciate you watching. I'll see you soon. Hey everybody, this is Robert with RC Archery. Thank you for purchasing this instructional video on how to defeat target panic. In this video, I'm going to be going over how to find out what our trigger or multiple triggers that we have are. And then I'm going to give us a step-by-step process on how to manage them, wean them off, and then rebuild your shot to where you can have the best chance at not developing target panic later on down the road again, and managing your symptoms as we go. All right guys, so first thing we need to do is identify our trigger or our triggers. So in a medical way that they handle this with OCD, they use a program called cognitive behavioral therapy. And within this therapy platform and this program, they have it broken down into 2 main categories. Now, the first part is exposure therapy, and the second part is ritual prevention therapy. So when we're talking about this and bringing it back to archery, the first portion of this, the exposure therapy, what we're going to be doing with this is finding what our triggers are, whether that is aiming at a target and our pin hitting the middle of the target, and then because some people like to hold low on the target and they can't force their pin up, or it could be that your thumb or your finger is getting to the trigger and that's causing you to want to just punch the release. Sometimes it's getting through a hinge or even a resistance release and just ripping through them, or rotating the hinge through it, something like that. Whatever it may be, we will find that, and then you use a building block pattern to then replace the ritual that happens after. So again, with archery, when we see the target and our pin is trying to get to the middle of the target, we hold low. Seeing the target and our pin reaching the middle of the target is the exposure. The ritual or the event that happens is we hold low. Or in another example, putting our pin on the middle of the target, holding very well, and then our finger touching a trigger, and then just wanting to punch the release. That holding on the target and then touching of the trigger, that's the exposure portion, the trigger of what we're doing. And then the ritual or the response to that is punching at the trigger. So in the first section here, we're going to be going through exactly how to find your triggers with a few drills and ways to break that down. All right, so the way that we're going to do this is what I call an isolation drill. We are not going to shoot the bow. We're actually just going to hold on target and introduce different stages of it one at a time, because we want to break this down and really find the root of our problem. So the first thing that you're going to do, and you can set this up at 20 yards, 30 yards, 40 yards, 50 yards, whatever you want to do, just normal distance for you. Set up on target, draw the bow back, try to put the pin in the middle of the target, and just hold there and watch your float. See if you can hold on target and hold your float with the pin in the middle of the target first and see what that looks like. Now, if you can do that and you don't have a tendency to want to hold low or a tendency to maybe flinch or jump or feel like your body almost just wants to go, you know, kind of like that racehorse that's in the chute and it's ready to just bust out of that chute and it bounces around a lot. It's super antsy and excited and ready to go. A lot of us feel that same way when we go to shoot our bow because we're holding it on target and that's our trigger. So once we've established whether that's us or not, let down, take a few seconds, few moments, breathe, kind of let our muscles relax, let the lactic acid come back out of them, all that good stuff. And then we're going to draw back on target and hold again. And then we are going to introduce either setting our finger on the trigger or our thumb, or getting to a click on a hinge when you get to anchor, or whatever that may be. Getting on, you know, if you have a hinge without a click, maybe taking your thumb off the thumb peg and just holding on target. Again, you don't want to shoot a shot here. You just want to hold on target and see what's going to happen. Now, a lot of us will flinch and we will shoot a shot when this happens because your target panic trigger is your finger touching that release trigger itself, or coming off the thumb peg on a hinge, or hearing the click, or whatever it may be. But that's okay. We're just doing this once because we want to identify the trigger. If that is your trigger, then that's fine. For most people, this is where you will find your issues. You're going to have the club that holds below the target, and you're going to have the portion that has to punch or dump a release, and you may do both. So this is how we're going to first identify what we're dealing with, and now we have to go through and we have to start working on our steps to be able to manage this. All right, so here's where we start step one of the cognitive behavioral therapy. And this is the exposure therapy part. This part is where we are going to slowly incorporate our trigger in multiple stages. And the reason that we're going to do this in stages is because we want to be able to manage it in a controlled environment and be able to have an out, I guess, if you want to call it that way. So if you're looking at it from an OCD standpoint, a lot of people feel like they need an out of some sort available to them. It helps them mentally. It helps them feel like that they are not being completely forced into the situation that causes their issues, whatever they may be. So in archery, we're going to do this in the same fashion, but we're going to slowly start introducing our trigger back into it in a controlled environment. So there's two camps that the majority of you will follow into. And this is the ones that hold underneath the target, or anytime you get to the middle of the target, you punch. And then there is the release induced portion of you. And that's when you touch the trigger, come off the thumb peg, hit your click, then you want to dump or punch on the release. So for your last camp there, the ones that have to deal with the release, you're actually going to have some extra steps. You will follow the program the same way as what we talk about, but you'll have some extra steps. So we're going to talk about that second. But the first part that we're going to talk about is primarily with the people that are aiming triggers where they hold under the target or they get to the middle and then want to punch. And then we'll explain how that looks from there.